What do public school teachers think of homeschool kids? We're going to find out on today's episode of the Ex-Homeschoolers Club. I'm your host, Jacob Gooden, and if you're new here, welcome in. This is the Ex-Homeschoolers Club, where we talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly of growing up a homeschool kid. If you're a returning audience member, welcome back. So stoked to have you. Today, I'm joined by my lovely friend, Patti Hunt, and I'm so stoked to talk to her. She was a school teacher for 20 years. Is that right, Patti?
Yes, yes.
Okay, 20 years, and then she ended up doing the RV life thing for a couple of years, and now she is a traveling. She's just like kind of a little bit of a nomad, and travels around the world and shares her experiences. We know each other because, well, I produce and edit for your podcast and some of your other stuff. But with all that, Patti Hunt, welcome to the Ex-Homeschoolers Club.
Thank you so much, Jacob, for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you. It It's really cool. I Getting to know you has been such a fun experience. We met in Orlando, Florida a couple years ago at a podcasting conference, and you said something to me like it was one of the last days we were there. You were like, "We are going to work together on something. I don't know what it is, but it's going to happen." And not long after that, I became your editor, producer, and we just have stayed in touch and done some really cool stuff together. So, if you want to check out anything Patty's got going on, Inspired Travels with Patti on YouTube, Instagram, podcasts, all that kind of stuff. Go check it out. There'll be links down in the show notes below. But Patti, let's talk about you being a public school teacher. So you were a school teacher for 20 years. First of all, how did you get into that? Did you know that that was the career path you wanted to go down?
No, no, not at all. I decided when I was young that I needed to go to college, have a career, and then I'd be able to retire and be financially set. That was the goal. I grew up in a home where college wasn't something any of my family did. Nobody had gone to college. But I just knew, having grown up in a home where money was always a struggle, that education, college was so important. And that was the way to have success and be financially set. And so I went to college. I actually, a lot of people don't know this, but wanted to be a doctor. So
Okay.
I was sort of, in that beginning stages. And I started college at 17. I graduated high school a year early. And I took classes. And one of my first classes was anatomy physiology at 7 a.m. And I don't think I was ready for college. I wasn't ready for getting up early in the discipline, but I made it through. What anatomy physiology taught me was I might not be cut out to be a doctor. So at that point, I decided, like a lot of people, to just get my business degree. And that's what I did. I got my business degree, and all of my electives, every other class that I could take that I had an option, was in psychology. I love psychology. I love knowing about people, how they thought. And so I ended up with a degree in psychology as well as a business degree. So now, fast forward, got married, had kids, and decided that I wanted to spend more time with my kids. I loved working with children. And so I went back to school and got my master's degree in education. And it started out in elementary education, which I quickly realized was not for me. And then I went into middle school and finally high school.
So you kind of did a little bit of the gamut, it sounds like. You said elementary and then junior high and high school. So, like, in the younger years, it's more of like you kind of teach everything, right?
So the elementary level, you teach everything. And that was where my initial
Mhm.
education was in elementary education. And I didn't like teaching everything. English wasn't my
Right.
thing. Math wasn't my thing. So I wanted to really focus on biology.
Let me tell you some of the myths that I think homeschool kids believe about public school. So, one, and maybe not just homeschool kids, but I think homeschool families kind of have this little bit of a negative view of the public school system, and I'm a little bit of an exception. I went to public school for 2 years, and the reasons my parents pulled me out of school had more to do with the schools in the area not being up to snuff with what they wanted for their kid. My mom was like, I think I can actually do better here. But they weren't against public school. So I never had that indoctrinated into me, but I grew up with kids who were like, public school is like is evil, it's indoctrinating, it's it's a inferior product to what my parents are doing. And so I wonder, like, can you crack that myth at all for us, or like lay out maybe it's quite not quite as bad as people are making it out to be in the public school system?
This is a tough one because I think we could start a lot of kind of reactions from people. Let me just say, I grew up in Philadelphia. So while I wasn't in the city of Philadelphia, I was in the Northeast, a little bit different an area for those who aren't familiar. And I was in public school in Philadelphia, and it didn't do a great job for me. It really didn't. And it was a very negative experience for me. I'll be totally honest. I was actually sick all the time, so I missed a lot of school. And while maybe there was the support, I didn't feel supported. I felt left out. I felt left behind. I felt like I wasn't capable. So I think the public school, on the other hand, I think schools do the best that they can do. And the bottom line is it often comes down to money. What are the resources available? And that's kind of sad. I Let me just say this. If I had it to do all over again, I would have homeschooled my kids, but that would also be based on their personality, what would work for them, because each kid has an individual personality, individual needs. And I think when kids are going to elementary school, it's not like you could ask a first grader, hey, do you want to stay home and do school or go to school? That's not necessarily something that you could do, but I think that knowing their options as a parent is a great thing to know. So going back to your question about public schools, I think that they are failing in a lot of ways. I was very frustrated with public schools growing up, seeing my kids in public school. Some of that was very frustrating as so I do think there are, and as a teacher, definitely saw the downside of it. I worked in a school district that was a very low income school district, so a lot of the students I was working with were at risk youth. I love doing that, but again, lack of funding, lack of having coaches and counselors and the things that those students needed was definitely missing.
Yeah. No, I totally align with that. I recently had a conversation with a cousin of mine who she's a current second grade school teacher, and she was mentioning very similar things of like when the funding's not there, things get worse and it becomes much harder. She also works in an integrated school, so there is no special education programs. Those kids are in the classrooms as well, and so you have this mix that, like you said, like kids, we can be very individualized with the way that we learn, and that I'm sure is hard when you're teaching a classroom of 20 plus kids, sometimes up to 30
Burden,
kids. Like,
burden.
yeah. From that perspective, I definitely understand the argument for like homeschooling. I think one of the other fears that comes from the homeschool world is also like what is being taught in the school systems. And this, like, I grew up in a religious homeschool environment. So there's a lot of this talk of like indoctrination happening in schools, which, based on my experience and based on now knowing a bunch of school teachers, I'm like, they're just there to teach a textbook that the state has provided for them. Is that pretty accurate? Like, I don't know that there's necessarily a whole lot of indoctrination happening.
Think about it. So we're human beings. I taught in a school district where the students, the parents were religious, Christian religion mostly. And that's fine. That's okay. But here I was teaching science, life science. So now you get into the question of evolution. And so while I tried to just teach by the textbook, and that is something I did because everybody's individual belief is their belief. I'm not there to change or talk about religion or any of those things was not what I wanted to talk about. But, teachers are human beings, they're individuals. Their kind of belief system probably plays into things to some degree. And then there are teachers who will full on give their opinion, give their thoughts, give their belief system, whether it's an English teacher reading a book and giving her belief system about whatever it is, that's going to happen. That is absolutely going to happen. Even a gym teacher, kid comes into class and he's overweight. What that teacher believes may pour out. So,
Okay.
yes, you have that happen.
So I am also curious at this point in your career, how familiar were you with like the homeschool movement? And like, was that something that you knew about? Was it just kind of a like, oh, that's like on the fringe kind of a thing? And you said that if you could go back and do it differently, you would homeschool your kids. But like, it seems like either went to public or private school. So I don't know what was your thought on homeschooling at that point?
So my kids were all public school. We lived in really good school districts. That said, that means so much. It's not like they're quote unquote good school districts and everything's perfect. At the time my kids were growing up, had some conversations with people that did homeschooling, and I was very curious. And one of the thoughts that came to mind was, well, I can't teach them everything they need to know. So my belief system was, if I'm going to homeschool, I need to know it all: the English, the math, the science, the social studies, all of it. And I knew I wasn't capable, but I had talked to somebody who was homeschooling her kids. And they had a whole community of people that got together, or they had, now, this was back before computers and online courses and all of that. So they had one parent that they go to a house and she would teach certain topics, and that's how they kind of taught their kids all of everything. But as my kids got older and seeing each of my kids struggle in a different way, I had three kids, each one of them struggled in a different way. And I think every kid has some struggle. I don't think that you have a kid that just excels at everything and everything's perfect, because if that's the case, when they get out in life, that could be a rude awakening. And so I just thought that being able to give them the experiences, get them out of a classroom, not sitting behind a desk for long periods of time, I really truly believe that that is, in my opinion, a better way for kids to learn. It's just what I've come to believe. Now, that said, should all parents homeschool their kids? Are all parents able to be home with their kids? Because when they're young, it's not like you could go out and do a job and leave your first grader home being homeschooled. So it isn't for
Right.
everyone. I wouldn't want a parent to feel bad if they can't homeschool their kids. I have three kids and five grandkids, and none of my kids right now are thinking about homeschooling in any way, shape, or form. And it is probably for the best that they and their kids are in public schools. It's
Yeah.
it's not for everyone, and nobody should feel bad about the choices they make.
My philosophy on it has always been like be parents being involved and included in their child's education of like what are they interested, what is your kid interested in, what like, and this was something when I was like I don't want kids, but when I thought about okay, if I did have kids, what kind of dad would I want to be, those types of things, I think about like the level of involvement I want in my kid's life, right? And that becomes like this like okay, hey, like I would want to do this. I would want, my dad really leaned in when I was interested in like learning about the history of wars, and so it was like he leaned in with that with me, and so we would go to the museums and we'd watch the movies and we'd read the books and we whatever. I believe that even if I had been in public school, he would have done the same thing. Like he just would have been like, "You're interested in this? Let's like full fledged, let's go," kind of a thing. And so to me, I'm like, I think even if you can't, like you were saying, even if you can't homeschool your kids, there's a level of like be involved in your kids' education to understand what is the things that make them tick, what do they like to learn about. Let's like you cultivate a wanting to learn and this like desire to always be learning things, and that will take you, I think, way further than any any education ever will, because if you want to learn it, you'll figure it out eventually, right?
What you're saying is so true. So, for parents whose kids are going to public school, they're leaving the house every day, they're going to school. I think absolutely what you said, take an interest in what they're doing, obviously, and then go find things. If it's war museums, go do that. My one grandson loves to bake. Do that with them. It's education. You are teaching them skills. You don't have to make it like, okay, we're cooking today and I'm going to teach them fractions, but you can incorporate those things. When my grandkids are learning to read, showing them the ingredients, showing them the words, reading it to them, pointing out like this is the cake mix. They're going to learn that word very quickly.
Right.
It doesn't have to be, we're going to sit down now and you're going to learn how to read, or I'm going to educate you. It doesn't have to be that. Let them see different things. To some degree, let them make some choices. Let them try different things. I think that is absolutely part of it and is an add-on to the education they're getting.
Absolutely. I want to pivot just a little bit and go into, let's talk about traveling a little bit. So, you when I met you, you were living in an RV and traveling across the United States of America. So, can you tell that story? How did you get from like, okay, I'm a school teacher to now like, okay, now I've left everything, I've downsized my life, and now I'm living in an RV going across the consecutive 48 United States. What was that like?
And I'll give a quick story to that. Years before the RVing thing, I was teaching, as I said, in a school district with at-risk youth. I had been sent for training to mentor students, and I was mentoring my students. And that to me, I enjoyed that more than the actual education. You can't educate a kid, you can't help them learn photosynthesis if they're worried about where they're going to sleep that night or whether or not they're going to eat. And so for me, I wanted to support them as best I could. And the school district would say, well, you can't take your time, your own time to do that because it's not fair to the other teachers because they have to do door duty or cafeteria duty. And it just became frustrating. So I ended up quitting after 20 years. I just quit. I said, okay, one more year and I'm done. And then I got into other things, other businesses. I became self-employed. Um, and so after moving to Las Vegas and COVID hitting, that's where the decision to go in an RV and travel came. My husband just said, hey, let's just travel across the country. Let's go in an RV. Let's sell it all. And I just got to the point where I said, what the heck? And just, I am not that spontaneous a person. Like, I need a plan. I need to know what it looks like, what we're going to be doing, how this is going to work. And with very little plan, we did. We decided to just hit the road and see things that just I never saw as a kid. I never could have imagined. So that's how the whole travel got started.
Yeah, I think COVID gave a lot of people that courage, I think, to do something that they had been putting off for a while or that they had talked about doing, and it was just like, well, we're just at home anyways. Might as well just like, for you it was sell everything and move into to like what, a 45-foot RV, something like that, and drive across the country. That's wild. That was like, I mean, meeting you and Dan, I was like, I don't know how people could do this. Like, I don't know that I have that bone. I love traveling, but I don't have that bone in me. Um, yet, yet we'll put an asterisk on that. But so one of the things that when you and I met and we were talking and you found out I was homeschooled, you brought up to me road schoolers and meeting these people along the way who they travel with their kids all throughout the year and they road school their kids. And you have this funny story about one of the families you met. Would you mind sharing that?
I met a woman who lived with her four kids, and they were ranging in age from like 10 up to teenager. And they lived in a 45-foot fifth wheel. So those of your listeners who don't know what a fifth wheel looks like, Google it, look at it. Think about yourself, your husband, and four kids, first of all, in that kind of space. And so she and I just connected and we were talking, and she was telling me how she road schools her kids. And I was really interested in asking questions. And she said, sometimes my youngest just doesn't want to read. He's not the best reader. And I don't know what to do. And she was, I could sense she was feeling bad about herself. And so I said to her, I said, "I get it. I was a public school teacher for 20 years." And she physically took a step back. She took this step back, and I'm like, "No, no, no, I'm not," because I know she felt like I was judging her, and I said, "No, I'm not judging you. I think what you're doing is amazing." She was trying to work with each of her kids individually, figuring out what they needed, how to give them what they needed, and I then said to her, "Your kid," and again, I don't remember how old he was young, but a lot, and I'm putting this in air quotes, a lot of kids at the age her kid was is starting to read, and he wasn't. And the problem is, as parents, we're comparing. We're comparing, well, my kid's 5 and all the other kids are reading and mine isn't. Well, that's not true. It's even like within a household. My one grandson, who's now 9, was reading very quickly at a rather early age, and he just got it and started reading. The 6-year-old now is not reading quite so fast, but he's getting it and he will get it. And I said to her, "Listen, I think what you're doing is amazing. I wish I had done this with my kids." And we had a whole conversation around it. And I think the point here is I wouldn't want anybody to feel bad. I think parents are always feeling bad. You put your kid in public school, you hear about homeschooling, you feel bad, you feel guilty. Maybe that's what I should be doing. You take your kid out of school, you homeschool them, and you think, wow, maybe they're missing out. Maybe they should be in public school. It's you have to do what you feel is right for your kids. And as parents, we're not always going to get it right. We're going to screw some things up. That's just part of the job. It's part of the job description. But she and I had a great conversation, and I think she felt a lot better after we spoke.
I like what you had to say there because it was like my mom had this philosophy of like, okay, if I homeschool my kids and I choose to do it all the way through, because so for me it was second grade through high school. My sister went all the way through homeschooling, and her goal was always, can they get into college at the end of it? If they're smart enough to get into college, I've succeeded. They can read, they can write, they can do math, they understand science, kind of a thing. And and I had a different homeschool mom on the show, and she was sharing something similar. Of she's like, to your point of like, my kid was struggling to read, but eventually it clicked. Yeah, it was maybe 2 years past everybody else, but it was like it eventually clicked with them. But it just took time to get them to that thing. I think for a long time I held this like, oh well, we're all like at the same grade level, very traditional public school kind of mindset. I think in my head of just kind of this like we're all at the same level, we can all do the same things, kind of a deal. And the older I've gotten, the more I've realized I'm like, no, we're just like all at these different levels in our life, and eventually they'll level out, or someone's gonna surpass me, and that's cool. And then like I'll surpass them in other ways, and it's like it's not a competition. It's just a that's part of life. We all are always learning new things and getting better with our skills. So I hope that homeschool parents are encouraged by that story for sure. What have you said, like, so being on the road and then now meeting all these families, what how has that changed your perception of homeschooling at all? Like what's changed there?
So much has changed there. And if I can, I'd like to go back and address the whole idea of
Yeah.
college. When I was growing up, I thought I have to go to college, have a career, I could retire, told that story. When my kids were young, my kids are older. When my kids were young, I used to say, when you go to college, when you graduate high school and you go to college, because to me, that was the only option. Well, over the years of me quitting the job, I mean, I had have my master's and I went on to get 45 additional credits because I was working toward my doctorate degree. And, that was the belief when you go to college. Well, years later, probably 10, 15 years ago, I've realized that college isn't necessarily for everyone. Look, if you want to be a doctor, a brain surgeon, a lawyer, obviously there are a lot of things that you may choose to do that college absolutely you're going to need. But does every student need to go to college? I no longer believe they do. I just had lunch with my three kids, five grandkids, their spouses, and my daughter said, she finished college. She feels like she barely made it through, but she did. She graduated after 4 years. And she said, I wish I hadn't gone to college. She said, I don't know that that was what I needed to do. Now, life changes, so you never know. COVID hit. She was a preschool teacher. She had her education degree. And, during COVID, she was like, no, I don't want to do this anymore. So she ended up getting a great job that she loves that doesn't really have anything to do with her education. So a lot for me has changed, whether you choose to homeschool your kid or send them to traditional school, knowing that kids have options. I think more important or as important as learning math and science and, literature and social studies and all those basic things that you're taught, I think as important is letting your kid know that what they want to do, what they would like doing, because a job does not have to be, well, this is the 9 to 5 place I go 5 days a week. I get a couple weeks of vacation a year and I just struggle through till I retire. I totally don't believe that anymore. And I do see where homeschooling teaches that, especially people on the road, showing people. I met a couple early on. They were in an SUV. It was the husband, the wife, and two kids. They had driven from North Carolina out to Las Vegas, and they said their kid was the, on Zoom learning about the Grand Canyon. It was during COVID, so they were they were learning by Zoom.
Right.
She said, I just told my husband we're getting in the car and we're driving across the country and showing it to him. And that's what they did. She said, like the hands on. And I see that all the time. I see that with all types of education, whether it's seeing the country, learning about the world, there's so much you learn by getting out and doing, as well as learning how to get along with other kids, make friends, deal with situations. There's a lot there that I see just such a incredible, just incredible value in homeschooling kids, whether you're traveling full time in an RV or you're doing it at home.
I always think about like I loved Revolutionary War history. Like I love understanding the founding of this country and what we fought for. I think it's so fascinating to me. And so when I was in high school, I got the opportunity to go to Boston, and it was like a church trip. So I was just there with friends, and I was geeking out the entire time. Every building is historical in Boston, Massachusetts. Like everything has some piece of history tied to it. And so I'm geeking out the entire time. And I'm telling people all these like they're like it was like having a tour guide with us because there's Jacob in the front of the group being like, "Oh, did you know that chapel yada 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 yada, and that's the one and all this kind of stuff." And but it was like seeing it in person. Like reading it in a book and seeing pictures of it in a book is like so different than actually like walking the streets of it. And so I wanted to ask you, in your time in the RV traveling across the United States, was there anything that you guys stopped at that you were like, that you learned maybe a piece of history that you were just like, oh my gosh, this is amazing, and I would have never known this, or maybe you did know it, but you got there, you're like, seeing this in person, just totally different. I love this.
I think for me, and again, I wasn't a big history person at
Hmm.
all. And I didn't do well when I was young, just learning information. So when
Right.
I had to learn about certain things in history and dates and people, that was my worst. There was nothing for me to tie it to. It was just this just bunch of information. And so being able to travel across the country and see certain things, and I can't remember if there's something history-wise. I do know I always called myself geographically challenged. So I live on the East Coast in Philadelphia. I know some of the states in and around the East Coast. I know where California is. But I didn't know, like, where certain states were, anything about them. So traveling across the country and learning about states, and there were a lot of things that I learned along the way that was like, "Oh, yeah, that was what they were talking about in school," and I can't remember an example, but I remember thinking, "Oh, that's what they talked about in school. Duh." It was almost like simple, easy, and
Right.
even just having lived right outside Philadelphia in Philadelphia, and then outside of Philadelphia for most of my life, you take for granted all that Philadelphia has. Again, you learned about it in the book. When I think I was in elementary school, they took us to see the Liberty Bell, and I was young, and I was like, "Okay, who cares?" I couldn't have told you anything about it. And then getting in the RV and there not being that pressure and there not being that, "Okay, now this is what we have to learn today." Like, it
Hmm.
almost being forced, and I hate to say that about public school, but here's the things you need to
Right.
know and remember and regurgitate, and it's just not that way when you're homeschooling, and certainly not that way with most people traveling and
Yeah.
learning.
I was gonna ask, so did you have you done all 48? Have you done all 50 states?
No.
Okay.
So, no, I definitely need to get to
How
Hawaii.
how close? Okay, so we have Hawaii, so we're missing Hawaii, but how close are we?
So of the 48 states, I think the last time I counted was 28.
Okay.
I
Okay.
have to recount, but I will say, now this is an RV thing. There are maps, and you can't see it, but I have a map and I fill in the sticker of the states that I've been to. And the thing is, RVers one of the biggest debates is when you get to put the sticker on the map. So, do you
Hmm.
just pass through the state? Did you stop? So, there's debate. So, I have to go back and recount and then think to myself, what is it that counts as having been to a state? For me, it's a memory created. For some RVers, it's, oh, you have to stay there overnight. So, different people have different things. So, it's probably over 28, probably
Okay.
30 something.
Do you have a favorite?
So it depends on what I was looking for. One of my favorite states is Oregon. Um, I love Tennessee. I went to a little town and we talked about it called Bonacqua, Tennessee, that I think you didn't even know where it
I
was.
had no idea that that even existed. Yeah, it's like I think about an hour, 45 minutes, something like that outside of Nashville. So,
Yes, yes. And it's just, uh, there were different states and different areas that I loved for different reasons. I love Florida because I love Disney, you know.
right.
Each area has something to offer.
So now you're off the road, but you're still traveling. I mentioned Inspired Travels with Patty, and one of the things aside from, I mean, so your show, I mean, you talk with people who travel all different ways. You had somebody on who lived in a boat for 6 months. Like you fly and people go by trains and travel with their kids who have autism, and you had me on and we talked about Nashville and just like going doing stuff in your backyard and things like that. But you interview these people who talk about trips and travel and those types of things. What have you got coming up? Any fun trips on the books, or maybe they're not scheduled yet, but you're like, okay, I'm working on this thing. I want to go do this experience.
So for me, what I have coming up, and again, my whole idea of encouraging people to travel is I just want to inspire people to live life fully. And I think that you get so much whether you take a walk in a park near your house. So that's the whole idea behind what I do. I have been asked over the last 4 years about going to the Keys in Florida. There were 2 years that Dan and I had planned on going, and we never got there because my mother got ill, then he got ill. And last year I said, "Okay, I'm going to the Keys in Florida." I was invited to go. I just need to get there. And so this year, I am definitely going to the Keys. Not planned yet. I do a lot of last minute plans, but definitely will be going to the Florida Keys. I'm excited about that. In January, I'll be back in Tampa for the Tampa RV show, and then we met at Podfest in Tampa after that show. It actually is at the same time this year, but that is planned. And, I just wanna keep myself open. Travel to me is just the most amazing, it's just wanna do lots of it. So I will be making more and more plans for travel.
Yeah. I think one of the great things, like, now living on the eastern side of the country is the closeness of states. Like, if I want to go to a different state, it's not that long for me to go up to Kentucky. It doesn't take that long to go to Arkansas or Georgia or anything like that. And I know Pennsylvania is that way too. Like, you could get in a car and be in a different state in, like, in a couple of hours.
Right.
Um, Growing up in California, I mean, granted, you go to Northern California, it is not the same as Southern California. However, you're still in California. Um, and so I think that's something that now, as I've gotten older, I've started to appreciate a lot more of, just like, oh my gosh, I can go anywhere in just like a few hours and like not be in the same state, totally different vibes. Because states do have this completely different vibe. It is
Right.
I don't, unless you've experienced it, I don't like it is such an interesting thing to like just cross over the border of a state and stop at the first town and it'd be like, this is completely different than the than the previous state. Um yeah. So, okay, with that, traveling. I know your big thing, like you said, is encouraging people to just get out and travel. What has helped you get in that mindset to be like, okay, just gonna do this. I'm gonna, because a lot of people, you and I talk about this all the time on the phone. Of like, we do this, we'll put it on my bucket list. It's down the line, it's down the line, it's down the line, and eventually I'll get there. What has gotten you to the point where now you're like, okay, enough with the waiting. Like, let's actually like just pull the trigger. We're doing the thing.
Because life is too short. People hear it all the time. People hear that saying that I say all the time, "Live life fully every day." You never know, and I don't say that for people to be afraid. I say that for people to really stop and say, "Okay, what is something I could do?" Because, my husband a year and a half ago at 64 ended up in long-term nursing care. Um, Years before that, I've lost people that have suddenly passed. I one of the big things is sitting with my mother. Now she was 87. She had 3 children, 3 grandchildren, saw 2 of them married. She has 5 great-grandchildren, and while we sat there, basically on her deathbed, she talked about all the things she regretted not doing. So if any message that I could get out to anyone is about not having regrets, and I think a lot of times people put things on their bucket list, going to Alaska, going to Hawaii, I wanna go to Italy, I wanna travel. You put it on your bucket list and you say, "Well, I don't have the money, I can't do that, I'm waiting for the perfect time, the perfect person to go with." Start small. We all have the ability to go explore the little town. I visited a town 20 minutes from here, 20 minutes from my house. I felt like I stepped back in time. It was, like, started in 19 whatever, early, very early, and I felt like I stepped back in time and just spent hours there listening to the waterfall, just a beautiful that's travel to me. It just got me out of my everyday, and everybody can do that. I don't care how much money you have, I don't care how much time you have, the lack of planning, it doesn't matter. Just go do those things, and that'll lead to what's next, and how do I get to that next thing and that next trip, and so that's what it's all about for me.
I love that. I love that. You and I think, share much of that philosophy of like, it doesn't take going far to find something fun to do that you've never done before, literally in your own neighborhood. So I love that. Patty, is there anything we've missed in our chats about public school, homeschooling, road schooling, travel? Is there anything else that we need to leave the people with?
I just wanna leave people with, especially parents, go easy on yourself. Again, I'm gonna reiterate, nobody gets out of parenting without screwing some of it up. We are doing the absolute best we can. I think to myself, if I could go back and do it again, these are the things I do different. I'd look at my grandkids and think, oh, this is what I would do. We are doing the best we can. Cut yourself some slack. Every day is a new day. And do what feels right for you and your kids. What other people think is none of your business, because a lot of times we're thinking about what someone else thinks of us, and they're not even thinking about it. They have their own lives, they're dealing with their own stuff. So don't worry about it. And that's easier said than done. It takes practice. But when it comes to your kids, look at what your individual kids seem to want or need and try and do that the best that you can.
I love that. All right. With that, guys, go check out Patti on Inspired Travels with Patti. I highly encourage checking out her YouTube channel, mostly because I produce that. But but go give her some love, some support. She has a brand new show, and we talk all about travel. So if that's something you're into, go subscribe to that. Hopefully you have enjoyed the show. Do all of the internet things that you know how to do on my show. Leave a like, leave a comment, leave a subscribe. All of the things. You know what to do, okay? I don't have to tell you. If you've got any questions or you want to reach out to me, exhsclub@gmail.com. And with that, Patti, once again, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your public school teacher knowledge and your travel knowledge with us. And yeah, until next time, we'll see ya.